Hello everybody and welcome back to another Pokémon Emerald video. Today I will be playing through the game with a sort of meme Pokémon from the third generation. It would have been better to use Luvdisc on Valentine's Day, but whatever. As usual, the rules that I will follow are that I can only use my starter in combat. I cannot use items from my bag in battle. I can't increase my evasion in any way, and I can't use cheats or glitches. Luvdisc is not exactly known for its combat prowess. It has very bad stats and a shallow move pool, so I hope things will not go too badly today. The start of the game is not exactly great. Luvdisc only has tackle and charm, which is kinda bad because since I have very low physical attack and it is not stab, tackle will deal very little damage. I could have tried to take on our rival at a lower level by using Charm, but instead I grinded a bit against the wild Pokémons so that my tackle can do decent damage. By the time I reached the fight against the grunt in the forest, I already learned Water Gun, and so that move is going to replace Tackle in most situations. It is based off our special attack, which is slightly higher than our physical, and it is also stab. But most importantly, is very good against the first gym leader. Watergun is able to one-shot both of her Geodudes, but the same cannot be said for her Ace Nosepass. Here is where I used Charm a couple of times to lower his damage, so that I would be able to survive a bunch of Rock Tombs. Since she still had the potions, I expected the fight to take a while, but a crit bypasses that completely. Now that we have obtained the first badge easier than I expected, we can take on the Pico side quest, where we have to rescue this Wingull from the same Team Aquagrant as earlier. Once again, his Pokémon is defeated in a couple of water guns, and so we can move on with the story. But before we can leave this town, we can take on the optional fight against May. And this one proved to be quite challenging. I even lost once, but it could have been much worse. His Wingull is very annoying with Supersonic, but the main issue is Growl, because if he lowers my attack a lot, I cannot deal that much damage to Trico, and so even with a single Growl, Trico can completely heal up all the damage I did with my tackles. I was only able to defeat her in this attempt because I got a couple of crits, and those ignore the stat drops. Next there should be Brawly, and even though Water Gun is not that bad of a move to deal with him, it is not affected by Thick Fat and is special, I still did not like my odds, and so I went to Slateport. Here we have to defeat a couple more Team Aquagrants who are harassing this Captain guy, and even though the fight against them did not go super well, I was still able to defeat them without that many issues. The one good thing about Luvdisc is that it has the fast growth rate. This means that it will level much faster than other Pokémons. That's great for us, because by defeating a few more trainers, I was able to get high level enough to learn Takedown. That move is not great, it has low accuracy and recoil damage, but since the base power is quite high, is enough to deal with the now evolved Grovyle that our rival has. And so, unlike our previous encounter, this one goes smoothly. The same cannot be said for Wattson though. Since he has a type advantage, I lost to him quite a few times. I was not really seeing a way through this, and so I had to rely on Swagger once again. RNG strategies are not my favorite, but you have to do what you have to do. In this attempt, I was able to get through Voltorb without taking any damage, and that is quite important since his last two Pokémons deal a lot of it, so all of the HP matters. Swagger works fine for Magneton. It will not deal that much damage to itself since his attack is lower than his defense, and so I have to manually increase it by using Swagger multiple times. Unfortunately, the fight against Magneton goes on for quite a while because Wattson has a few super potions. Because of that, even though I had a Cherry Berry, I still end up being paralyzed in the end. But at the very least, I did not take that much damage, and once I reached Manectric, things were not looking too good for me. I am definitely in a one-shot territory, and so I had to hope that he would hit himself. And that's exactly what happens. Confusion makes him lose 3 turns in a row, and that was just what I needed to finish the fight. This fight may have been easier if I remembered to buy Ice Beam beforehand, but I forgot, and so I only got it before getting to Meterfall Caves. Not sure how much that would have helped considering that Magneton resists it, but it would have been better at least for Manectric. Anyway, after a bit of chatting with the two teams in Meterfall Caves, we reach the top of the volcano where we find Maxi and we fight him. Even though my physical attacks are weaker because of Intimidate, my special ones are still more than enough to take care of his team without any issues. Next we have Flannery, and since I have the type advantage, you would expect her to be easy, but that was not the case. That is all because of Attract. Since I am the opposite gender of Torkoal, that Pokémon can use Attract to make me waste a lot of turns, and in the meantime he can defeat me with the Body Slam. Using Swagger is risky since it increases the Body Slam damage and not so much the damage that he will do in Confusion. Ultimately, I still had to use that move here too to get me enough turns to be able to defeat the Tortoise. Unfortunately, Luvdisc does not learn any other water moves from level up, so I had to use Water Gun even at this point. Now that Flannery is defeated too, we have to backtrack and clean up Brawly. He is very easy because I have a lot of levels over his Pokémons, and even though my physical attack is very low, Secret Power was still enough to one-shot all of his Pokémons. Next we have to go to the normal gym, where we have to take on Norman for the 5th gym badge. He is much tougher than Brawly, and his Pokémons can deal a lot of damage with their normal attacks. Using Swagger here is very risky because by increasing their attack, I am surely going to be one-shotted or two-shotted. Unfortunately, I still had to use that move since there is no way I am able to defeat this team without it. I could have risked a couple of Ice Beam freezes, but that seems to be even less likely to work in my favor. I was a bit surprised to see that Linoon was not a two-shot with Ice Beam, but eventually I can defeat that Pokémon too thanks to a very crucial freeze. Since it used Belly Drum, I am sure that any move would have one-shotted me. Once Slacking comes out, things get a bit more serious. I used Swagger on it, but now I am sure to be one-shotted by a Facade, and so it's very important that he will hit himself all the time. And that is exactly what happens, giving me another RNG victory. By completing this gym, we are given the Surf HM, and so we finally have a good stab option for our Pokémon. We can also use it out of combat to reach the second half of the region, and here eventually we stumble upon the Weather Institute, where we have to defeat the Team Aqua Admiral Shelley. She was not really a big deal, and so we can move on to the next fight against our rival. May has become a bit more powerful, but since I now have Ice Beam to deal with her starter, she is much less dangerous than our previous encounters. The rest of her team does a little bit of damage to me, but it's nothing to worry about. Once we have defeated her too, it's time to take on the 6th gym leader, Winona and her flying team. This fight should not be too problematic. I have Ice Beam, which is super effective on most of her Pokémons, and for the remaining ones I can still use Surf. Things are not guaranteed to go well though, because both Pelipper and Skarmory have RNG moves, and I would not be surprised to see them defeat me with those. That would be poetic, since I had to rely on RNG up until now. Fortunately, that was not really the case. Pelipper only stalled me a little bit with Protect, but that's somewhat understandable, and overall did not really affect the outcome at all, since I have more than enough PPs for my moves. Once we have obtained the Fly badge too, we can resume our journey, and in the next town over, we can fight May for the last fight. Her team did not change much compared to our previous encounter, and how could it really? It was just a little while ago. She only added a Tropius, which is fine, but it will still get one-shotted by Ice Beam. Pelipper is a bit harder to deal with. She stalls with Protect and is only neutral to Ice Beam, so it takes a few more turns to defeat. Once we have beaten our rival for the last time, we can get to the Pokémon Tower, sort of, and get the Magma Emblem from the lady on top. With this key item, we can enter the Team Magma Cave where Groudon is, but we get there a little bit too late. After being awoken, Groudon runs away, and we have to fight Maxi. His team is very similar to our previous encounter, and once again I can rely on my special attacks to carry me through this one. Things get a bit more dicey because his Crobat confuses me, but even though I hit myself a couple of times, eventually I can snap out of it and resume the fight. Once Crobat is defeated, the fight is effectively over because a Surf is way more than enough to one-shot Camerupt. Next, we infiltrate in the Team Aqua base because they stole a submarine, but here we are only able to find another one of their admirals. The fight against him is not particularly challenging, but I don't think it's supposed to be, because this guy is just buying enough time for his boss to flee in the stolen sub. Next, I had to do a lot of grinding against all of the trainers in the sea, because our next major fight is going to be against Tate and Liza. Even by getting a lot of levels, this fight was still very hard. Even though I have decent moves to deal with their Pokémons, Surf and Ice Beam are great for this fight, my low special attack makes it so I do not have enough damage output to one-shot their Pokémons, and because of that they can use a lot of annoying moves like Light Screen, Calm Mind, etc. Eventually I can get a nice crit that leaves only the 2 Meteor Pokémons left. With a bit more luck with Swagger, I can also defeat Solrock very easily. Lunaton proved to be a bit more tanky, but eventually that Pokémon falls too, and we have finally acquired the penultimate badge. Next, we have to go to the Pokémon Space program, where the Team Magma is still causing more problems. We team up with Steven to defeat the leadership of this team, and thanks to the fact that this fight is not a 2v1 and that Surf is quite good in this encounter, I just spammed that move over and over again. It does take a few turns to defeat all of their Pokémons because my damage output is not very good, but thanks to Metang setting up the screens, it is also quite safe. After using a good number of Surfs, I can finish off the last of their Pokémons, and so Team Magma is finally dealt with for the remainder of the story. As a reward for that fight, we get the sub HM, and we have to use it to reach the seafloor cave. Here we find Kyogre still asleep, but we are soon reached by Archie, who wants to wake it up. To try to stop him, we end up challenging him. Once again, Ice Beam and Surf are great for this kind of teams, and even though it takes a few turns, it was not really that challenging. Unfortunately, as we all know, that was not enough to stop the story from moving on, and the red orb activates anyway, awakening the legendary Pokémon. Now that both of them are active, the weather is a mess, and to stop that we have to go ask Rayquaza for help. While I do that, could you do me a favor and leave a like, maybe subscribe, and write down a comment if you have anything to say. Once Rayquaza saved humanity from the 2 legendaries, we can get back to our badge collection, and we can finally take on the last of the gym leaders. Juan uses water types, which is fine. I don't have anything great to deal with them. My best move is a return, which will do not that great damage. I can use Surf against Whiscash and Ice Beam against Kindra, but once again, the damage is nothing to write home about. The thing I was most worried about was Kindra because of the double team strategies. Since my damage output is not very high, I don't think I will be able to two-shot it, and so it will have enough time to rest and recover all of his HP after using double team a bunch of times. That can easily turn into a disaster, because you will never hit it, and even if you manage to land an attack, it will rest the next turn, negating all of your progress. To make things worse, I even got confused at the start of the fight against this dragon, which definitely made things more complicated. Thankfully I can use Confusion too, and after a couple of swaggers, Kingdra will deal a lot of damage to Confusion if he hits itself. And that's exactly how I was able to defeat it before things spiraled out of control. Now that we have all of the badges, we can also use all of the HMs, and so we can finally enter the victory road. Here we are immediately stopped by the secondary rival of the game, Wally. His team is not too bad, but between Surf and Ice Beam, I should not have that hard of a time of dealing with it. Even though I misclicked against Magneton, I did not get punished with a Confusion or Paralysis, so I will take it. His Ace Gardevoir is a bit tougher to deal with because of the very high special defense, but 2 returns are just enough to defeat it. And so, after winning the last major fight, it's time to get to the league. Since things were not going too well, I decided to level up a bunch, getting close to max level but not quite there. Even at this high of a level, things were not exactly great. I really needed Substitute for some of the fights, but I was not sure what to forget. It would have been good of me to not teach Return quite yet and save it for after Drake, but since I teached it earlier, I had to get rid of a move for Substitute, and the one that did not make the cut was Ice Beam. It was a hard decision, since Ice is very good for the 2 grass types of Sidney and most of Drake's team. But I think that Return and Surf are much more useful for the remaining fights. Sidney went quite well because Substitute was able to stop most of the BS moves, and sort of the same can be said for Phoebe. Here the most dangerous thing is her lead with Curse, and since I have a Substitute up, she cannot use that move. That makes the fight a lot easier, but the other thing that I should have worried about is the PPs. Since the only move I have that can hit her is Surf, if I ran out of PPs of that, I am screwed. Banette even tries to make me waste all of my PPs with Grudge, but fortunately I noticed it and stalled with Swagger. That was not the brightest move, since it is able to get through and destroy my Substitute with a Shadow Ball, but since she did not use Grudge, I can finish it off. Sableye also tries to be annoying with Double Team, but after a couple of misses, that strategy fails too. Her last Dusclops is very tanky, and thanks to the berry, I am not able to two-shot it. It would have been a good idea to use another Substitute, but instead I used other random stuff that ultimately worked, so I'll take it. The third Elite Four is Glacia, and I was a bit worried about the fight against her. I don't have any great move to deal with her team other than Return. I guess I can use Surf on the Glalis since it is neutral on them, but I sort of forgot. The problem here is that they are quite tanky, and so it will take a lot of turns to defeat them. But since they like to use Hail, I will take chip damage at the end of every turn, and their attacks. All of that will start to add up, and so I'm not sure if I will have enough HP to defeat all of her Pokémons. I reached Walrein with a decent amount of HP, but between the full restores and everything else, I was not sure if I would be able to defeat it in time. And so, once again, I risked it with Swagger. Somehow things worked out in my favor, and Wolverine hit itself 3 times in a row, defeating itself in the end. Now that she is defeated too, we can move on to the last of the Elite Fours, and Drake is probably the most scary one. Without Ice Beam, his team is quite dangerous since they have a lot of damage output and they are decently tanky too. Here too, I had to make a lot of use of Swagger, because I don't think I will be able to defeat them in time otherwise. Luck was starting to catch up to me, and Swagger missed a lot of times for a 90% accurate move, and also they did not hit themselves all that often. Surprisingly enough, both Altaria and Kindra are actually helping me when they use Dragon Dance, because since they are increasing their attack, they will deal more damage to themselves in confusion. And since they are spending their time boosting, they are not dealing any damage to me. Because of that, I was able to get through Kindra with my substitute still intact and around half HP left. I was sure that Flygon would be able to destroy my substitute with Earthquake, and so I tried to Swagger, but it missed. Thankfully, the next turn it landed, and Flygon also hit itself. But because of the attack increase, it was able to destroy the next substitute I used immediately. Eventually I got enough turns to defeat it and get to Salamence with a substitute. Here too I had to use Swagger once again to hopefully buy me enough turns, and somehow, some way, that is exactly what happened. Salamence hit itself 3 times in a row. Yeah, that's like the 4th time it happens in this run. And I beat him, and thanks to that I defeated Drake in the first attempt. Things went quite a bit worse against the champion. Wallace is quite strong, his Pokémons are very tanky and can deal a lot of damage, so I lost a bunch of times. After a while I sort of got tired and used the rare candies to get to level 100. Even at max level, things were not that easy, and I still lost another 5 or so times. Surprisingly, in this fight, the main issue was Wailord. For some reason, it did not hit itself very often in confusion, and with the attack boost from Swagger, it was dealing a lot of damage to me. Also, Ludicolo was a bit of a problem. I had to have a substitute up, otherwise I would get Leech Seeded, and even then Giga Drain is more than enough to destroy my substitute. And also, if he uses Giga Drain on the sub, he still recovers HP, which is annoying but I guess fair. In the successful attempt, things went very well for the first half of the fight, and I was able to reach Milotic with most of my HP. This Pokémon's AI was not that great either, and it tried to Toxic the substitute, which does not work. And so that's another one down. Whiscash also misplayed and used Amnesia, giving me enough turns to defeat it with Return. Gyarados could have been a problem if I did not block Intimidate with the sub. And this time he uses a move that I rarely see him use. This Pokémon for some reason has Hyper Beam, and while it super destroys my substitute, since it has to recharge next turn, I can finish it off quite easily. Kind of a poetic ending. Things were not so easy with Luvdisc, but it could have been a lot worse if I did not get all of that good RNG. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed, leave a like, subscribe, ring the bell, and all of that YouTube stuff. If you have any comments, video ideas, feedback, leave them down below. and I'll see you next week. Bye!